before I ever got into hypnotherapy, I was a very self-conscious and I was the kind of guy who really lacked in confidence. Meaning friends would tell me, hey Sean, you know, you're a good-looking guy, you're a nice guy, you know, you should be able to get any girl that you want. But I couldn't. I didn't feel comfortable talking to people, especially women. Now this all started for me really back in college. And when I was in college, I had been dating my high school sweetheart, but it was a long-distance relationship. As anyone knows, sometimes those don't work out for 4 years. But I wasn't prepared for it at all. You know, I really believed that it was going to last, and my heart was in it. I was in love with this girl. So when it ended, and it wasn't by my choice, you know, when she broke up with me, I was devastated. I mean, I was totally unprepared, and I didn't really know how to handle it. And now, you know, I'm all positive and I know how to roll with the punches. But back then, I was completely the opposite. I was very negative. I took it as a sign that it wasn't that she wasn't interested in me, it was that I didn't have value anymore. You know, when my high school sweetheart wrote me a love letter or said kind things to me, or, you know, when someone made a compliment, I felt sky high. But when those compliments weren't there, I felt worthless. You know? So looking back on it, I realized that a big part of my problem dealing with that breakup was self-esteem. I didn't have it in myself. I didn't really know my value. It was coming from other people. So if a girl flirted with me or if my girlfriend said I love you, I felt great, but I didn't have it there in myself. So rather than getting over this in a couple of months and getting back in there and dating, what ended up happening was that I didn't date anyone for 6 years. You know, through the rest of college and right on into moving to Atlanta and starting working with CNN and starting a new life here, I didn't date anyone because anytime I would think about talking to a woman, I was expecting rejection. I was seeing myself through the eyes of my ex who decided that I wasn't worth her time anymore. So if you're anticipating being rejected, why even bother? You know, so there's a funny story actually that was when I was still in college. Shortly after, maybe about six or 7 months after this breakup took place, when I was in Chicago with some friends and we saw a ball game at Wrigley Field, but it was like 17 degrees outside, so we just decided to go to the bar next door. We walk into this bar, and before I can even get my coat off, this girl I've never seen before comes right up to me and just starts dancing right in my face. Just starts, you know, just doing a dance, you know. And I look at her, and I totally stopped. I looked at her and I said, "What are you, drunk?" Without even thinking about it. Because in my brain at that time, the only explanation for her coming up and dancing with me was that she was too drunk to know how worthless I was, you know. But she stopped, and she looked me right in the eye and she said, "No." And then she walked away. Now, I didn't realize this for years, but it was a defining moment because it showed me, in retrospect, that when you think a certain way of yourself, it shapes the entire way that you perceive the world. And so you frame all the actions of other people through your reality, through your particular lens. And my lens at that time was of worthlessness, so I kind of made everything fit into that lens. So during this time in which I was lacking confidence, shortly after I moved to Atlanta, after graduating from college, I was working with CNN, and there was a girl in the department who I really thought was cute. And there weren't many girls in the department because I was working in sports. But she worked in the graphics department. And every now and then I'd kind of try to make my way in there and do a little small talk. But again, I was just so lacking in confidence that I never really had the guts to ask her out. So after some time passed by, I left that particular company and she moved on. Never talked to her again. 10 years passed by. Now, after I'd done all this hypnosis and all this confidence building in myself, after I'd become a hypnotherapist and helped a lot of people, I'm at a concert and I bump into her. This little show down in some small part of Atlanta, and I bump into her and I see her there. Now, at this time, I have total confidence. I mean, I know myself, I know who I am, and I don't really even care whether or not she likes me, so to speak. I'm not concerned with trying to impress her. I just began to talk with her, and we reminisced a little bit. We talked about how things have been, but because I was confident in myself, I was able to connect with her in a way that I never had been before. And, you know, a couple years later, she's my wife. You know, so it makes such a huge difference. When I look back now, it's kind of such a perfect story because the before time when I met her, I mean, I was probably better looking. I was 10 years younger, you know, and I was still a funny guy. I was still sort of like, I still had the same positive qualities that I have now. It's just that I was able to communicate myself and sort of connect with her as well as other people in a way that I haven't been able to previously. And the result of it is either you have no one and you go home alone, or you end up falling in love and getting married and having happiness in life. And so I think when I'm working with someone on self-esteem issues and relationship issues and heartbreak, I'm coming from a place of, in large part, having been there. You know, I was not the confident guy at birth, and I had to learn myself how to make that transformation. And I think that's why maybe I connect with people a little bit who've suffered through similar things and can help them get there really quickly, because they don't have to suffer through the same 6 months, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it is that I went through in order to get happier. It can happen much more quickly now.